All right, Uda, if you want to come on stage, come on up, brother. I'll let you up. Let me drop the link. If you want to come up, I'll let you come up. All right, thank you guys for tuning in to the channel. We're just finishing up the weekend, about to head back to court tomorrow morning. I had promised you guys that I would give you a little bit of insight into the trial and share some of the exhibits that I found online to help you understand the background of this case. And like I said, Uda, on the go if you want to come up, brother. I know you're at the courthouse every day, so feel free to come up, join me, and I'll let you up. All of the exhibits that I'm going to share with you guys revolve around Kid Cudi, and they were all found online. In most cases, they allow the big news sources to get the exhibits, so they share it online, so I was able to find it. So that's pretty good. But I want to give you some insight into the trial. I've been at the courthouse every day since the very beginning of a trial, even during the jury selection. And so I have some insight that I want to share that maybe you haven't heard some of the points that I'll share. I noticed that during the first week of jury selection, when they questioned many of the women that would serve on the jury, many of them said they saw the video. One, in fact, said, "He's guilty. There's no way around it." Those were her exact words. So it's quite interesting. They had a guy there also that served at the United Nations. He worked in the Department of International Terrorism. I thought it was interesting to hear them interview him because he worked basically on cases similar to this one, but on a larger level. So he didn't make the cut, and I could understand why the defense would not want a man of his caliber to be on this case, especially with his insight and being able to frame different things, especially against the defendant, because the main objective is to protect the defendant, correct? Okay, so also there were individuals that they chose from. I believe they started off around either 600 or 400, and they had to boil it all the way down to 45 individuals. And I remember the day they got to 45, and then they had to really chomp at the bit and get to the 12 that would serve on the jury, and then also an additional six as backup, which made 18. And for some reason, a few people were dropping out. I think the judge received an email one night. Some lady said she couldn't serve on the jury. So they were a little worried that they would get to 18 and then people would still back out. So then the judge said he would get an additional three. So 18 plus three. And that was going into Monday morning when they made the final selection of the jury. And as I would go on YouTube, people would be saying, "Oh, they didn't choose the jury because there's a problem with the case and this and that." It was all nonsense. It's amazing how much people lie when it comes to this type of case. So that's the reason why I decided to take on this case. I covered the Donald Trump's case. I was in the courtroom with Donald Trump as he was sleeping most of the day. And that's when I learned how easy it would be to access this trial. And so most of the guys now that help me get into the courthouse every day, usually I'm first in line. I actually met those guys during the Trump trial. So when I heard about Diddy's trial, I said, "Hey, I know the ropes. Let me go tackle this trial." So this is how I'm here. And today I'm going to break down some of the exhibits that were shown in court, and the big companies, some of the bigger players had posted these pictures. So I'm just going to share them with you and kind of walk you through with my memory about what I recall about this case. Now, this is my first live that I'm actually doing by myself. So this is pretty cool. But this is how I want to keep my word because I promise I've been getting so much support. And even though I go on other people's channels, I said, it's very important that I come on mine and kind of break this down. So we're going to talk about strictly Kid Cudi's part and a little bit of Capricorn Clark in regards to the Diddy case, because the exhibits that I'm going to show is going to be about this matter. So we're going to start off looking at Kid Cudi. Actually, before I get into the exhibits, I'll just break this down. Each day we arrive at the courthouse. Now, sometime court starts at 8:30. Usually you have a lot of people there from the press. They line up separately on the right-hand side. They usually allow 14 people from the public, and so we typically line up on the left-hand side. Last week was the first time I saw that they only allowed 12 people in. So those two people that did not make it in were quite disappointed. So those 14 available slots are highly coveted amongst people who want to go in and be able to see Sean Puffy Combs, and also get a peek at the jury, the judge, and both legal teams. It's a vast legal team for both parts, because on the prosecutor side, you have 6 individuals. And then for the defense, I believe there's 9 attorneys. Diddy is lawyered up. He's trying to fight and win this case, as you would imagine anyone would. In the courthouse, when you go in, they tell you, especially if this is your first time, there's no chewing gum, there's no having a mint. The only thing you can have is water. There's no Pepsi, there's no Gatorade, none of that. The good thing is we typically get a break every hour and a half in between lunch. Lunch usually happens somewhere around 12. Maybe sometime it happens at 12:30, but for the most part it happens at 12. And we typically get about 45 minutes, which is good. A lot of people like to go and talk to their followers on YouTube, and those that are part of the press. They get some time to go on air and tell everybody what's happening. Tomorrow I get to go on Law and Crime, so I'll run down. I'll grab something to eat rather quickly, and then I'll go give my spiel, and then go right back into the courthouse. It's quite the challenge. I made this commitment. I've been in the courtroom every day since the beginning of the trial. If this trial goes on 3 months, I'll be there for the duration of the trial. It is what it is. It's quite exciting, though, to hear all the background details. And as I'm about to go through these exhibits, you'll get a chance to understand how it works. Usually for the prosecution, when they bring up a witness, like for instance, Kid Cudi, the first order of business is they bring up a picture of Diddy and they say, "Hey, do you know this fella here?" And he says, "Yeah." "Who is this?" "This is Sean Puffy Combs." And then usually they would go to a picture of Cassie and do the same thing. Now, here's the first exhibit I found online. Let's see here. Here we go. So this was actually a picture of Kid Cudi. This is what I saw him wear in court. He had on that biker leather jacket with those blue jeans, and I believe he had on white sneakers. I usually try to document, because all day we're taking notes and trying to bring back information about what we saw in court. Okay. Now, Kid Cudi was originally, according to what has been testified in court, he was hired by Diddy to produce a song for Cassie. And so somehow that ended up turning into a romantic sort of relationship. And that's when things went all the way left. And this is how we get this incident. Now, you hear many people talking about this whole thing about Kid Cudi and the burglary, and then also the arson. Well, I'm here to tell you, in court, first, they bring in various professionals, and the police officer kind of framed how the dispatch works in this particular area out in LA. And basically, when the call comes in to the dispatcher kind of put each call into a slot so that they know which officer or style to call. So in this case, it came in typically as a burglary. So it went across as a burglary to the officers. So they go to the premises thinking that his house or the premises has been entered of some sort. So they get to the residence, in which let me show you the exhibit that I found online for that. Um, Here we go. So in court, we had this one here, very similar picture. They didn't show all this here to the right, but focus up to the fence area with the door. So the police officer responds because he had a call come in regards to someone being at the premises of Kid Cudi's house. The police officer testified that when he drove up this hill here to the right by this door somewhere was a black Escalade, and I guess perhaps they saw the police coming. The police did say they answered with blue lights and a siren, so that would cause anybody, especially if you're at the wrong premises, you want to get moving, right? So at any rate, they saw the black Escalade driving up the hill, and the police officer really blew my mind because he said, no, we didn't stop them because there wasn't a crime committed thus far. So the police officer testified that his partner climbed over this fence that you see, this sort of short fence, and he went around and opened the door. And they proceeded to go to the door, and they said the door was unlocked. So I guess they knocked and went in. And they did make some observations that others had testified. I believe Kid Cudi had stated that he had some gifts that were on the table, and someone had opened it, allegedly Sean Puffy Combs. The police officer said that the gifts were luxury bags, I believe, of some sort. They also checked the premises to make sure that, there wasn't anyone there. And I believe they said they were there for about 20 minutes. They came back outside, back through the door that you see here. And this black Escalade now was coming back down the hill. And on each time that they saw this black Escalade, the officer said that he took down the license plates. So he did notate that. When they saw the black Escalade, now, in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure they stopped him this time or them this time. But the officer said that still there was no crime committed. So they did not bother to stop this black Escalade. But what he did do, he ran the plates through the digital computer that they had in the car. And when they ran the plates came back to Bad Boy Entertainment, none other than Truly Yours, Sean Puffy Combs, one of his companies, right? And so I thought it was very interesting of the sort. Now, let's go back a little bit and talk about how Capricorn had framed this whole account. She said that one morning, Diddy had found out that Kid Cudi was seeing Cassie, so he showed up to Capricorn's house. Now, Capricorn testified that pretty much all of the employees that they were working for Diddy, that he would pay for their rent. And like in the case of Cassie, she had a Jaguar. Diddy paid for that. But also it came out that Diddy was paying for their phones. And so when it came out, when Capricorn and Cassie were talking together about this whole affair situation with Kid Cudi, they were like, we're both talking on a phone right now that Diddy is paying for. So obviously, if he wanted to, perhaps he could go look at the bill or what have you and find out or get more information. That's the bottom line. So that was interesting. So Capricorn, I believe, either got her a burner phone or prompted her to go get a burner phone. Because I know on cross-examination, they were like, well, where did you get that idea from to get a burner phone? But anyway, let's stay on target with the story. Diddy finds out early in the morning, somehow. He comes to Capricorn's house, which is under his jurisdiction. I'll use that word because he's paying for everything. She says there's a bang on the door. He's banging on her door. He has a gun in his hand. And she testifies that he points it at her and also that he's waving it around. So she's completely terrified. She looks out, she explains how she looks out the peephole and so forth. And Diddy basically goes into the house and says, get your clothes on, let's go. I'm going to kill this N word. Okay. So in court, ironically, in court, they used the actual word. They didn't say N word, they used the word. So pretty much in court, everything is raw and pure and to the point. Very interesting just to sit there and hear all of this take place. But at any rate, there's another fella there that's Diddy's security guard. They go to Kid Cudi's house. This is according to Capricorn's testimony. They enter his house. Meanwhile, Kid Cudi is with Cassie, and I believe she's stressing about something. He picked her up. Somehow they end up at this hotel out in LA. So Capricorn is now in, let's see, I'm going to use this exhibit here, and we're going to imagine that because that day, Kid Cudi is driving this black Porsche. So obviously the Porsche is not there at the time, according to the story that they're telling. So we imagine that she's sitting somewhere approximately where this car is, and Diddy allegedly, along with his security guard, is in the premises, opening up the gifts and looking around. So Capricorn gets on the phone. The story comes out two ways. Number one, they say she called Laura London. Somehow that was a little misconstrued. They never cleared that up. And also, she calls Cassie, and Cassie is on speaker, and therefore Kid Cudi hears what's happening, right? And he's like, he's in my house. And then Kid Cudi gets on the phone. He calls Diddy. Diddy's allegedly in the house. Actually, according now, we have a witness. See, the way this all went down in court, Capricorn Clark testified after the fact, after Kid Cudi, after the police officer, after the arson expert. So we get a picture of all these things happening, and then Capricorn comes and places Diddy in the house. But not only does she place Diddy and the security guard in the house, she also is painting a picture about kidnapping, which could be a part of a RICO case. So you see the problem here? So now we have burglary. However, I will say that the police officer said that on the police report, it was not reported as burglary. It went down as trespassing. So that's a different narrative than burglary. And then we're about to get into this whole situation about arson. And I'm going to show you the exhibits of his car and how they put together, someone put together this Molotov cocktail. But right now, it's very clear to understand that these two things happen on two separate occasions. So the first time someone breaks into his home, and then the second time someone comes back and commits arson on his car. Now, what's interesting, let me show you this here. This is what the police officer said. Notice where his car is at. There's two cars behind the black Porsche that was set on fire with this Molotov cocktail. The police officer said that this was a very direct and targeted attack, or whatever you want to call it, because you really couldn't see his car from the road. So this picture helps you to understand what was being said about this in court. Now, we imagine his car was intact, and someone came and took a knife, I would imagine, and cut open. In court, they said that he had a canvas top. So that's what you're looking at. And so let me tell you what they did. They cut it open, right? And then they took these items. I have it here. They took that 40. I remember down south, I'm from Virginia, and those old guys, when I was coming up, used to drink that old English 40 ounce. I don't know how they drink that stuff anyway. So they fill that bottle with gasoline of some sort. And I think number two would be the liquid that went into the bottle. Number two is the sample, I believe. They took the sample in a bottle of that sort. But at any rate, they filled that exhibit number one up with gasoline. And you see, number three is the lighter. And the other container, I'm not too sure. I don't recall. But anyway, they took that old English bottle, filled it with gas. And let me show you something else here. And again, this is all online, nothing secret about it. So this is the handkerchief that was inside the bottle that whoever cut a hole in the roof of the car, they dropped it through here. So they dropped it through this hole after they cut the roof in two. But the problem was the handkerchief, after they lit it, it fell out too fast. And therefore, it did not cause the effect that whoever did it was trying to get. In fact, the arson expert said that had this went as planned, it's possible that the house would have caught on fire and also the two cars that were behind it. And there was a lot of damage that was done here. You can see his door is burned quite well. Also, look here, the bottle fell where you see the burn mark in the seat. And here's the actual picture of the bottle. And you can see quite a bit of gasoline was still left in the bottle. And again, that had an effect on why things did not get out of hand. One thing that came up in court is that on the back seat, remember with the O.J. Simpson case, there was a whole issue about a glove, and that's basically how O.J. was able to get out of this. This was reminiscent of this because in the back seat, there was a glove shown in court. I couldn't find the exhibit online. They did show it in court, but the officers, under cross-examination, they asked, hey, did you have the glove fingerprinted? And they were like, no, because the glove belonged to the owner of the car, which would have been Kid Cudi. So that did bring up a big question, like, well, maybe what if it wasn't his or what have you? But they did not really sew this whole thing up the way that I would have imagined they would. So this gives you an idea pretty much of the setting. These are some of the exhibits that they show in court to kind of help you understand what's happening or what did happen. And I guess ultimately it helps the jury come to a conclusion by looking at the big picture about what really happened, with this case. And this is just a small segment. It pretty much only went into one day from what I could see. But throughout the entire trial, there's so many of these different scenarios. The video, like when they showed the video on the very first day of the incident that happened, that we saw the video from CNN, they played the video so many times, and they really paint a picture to the jury about the defendant, especially as the female laid on the ground and she was constantly kicked. You could actually see not only jury members, but everybody in the courtroom. They were having all sorts of reactions to such a horrible event. But this week, I'll just finish off because, again, like I said, I just wanted to come on for a few minutes and share this with you. But I want to talk about this week. I'm just going to talk about a few key things. Let me tell you, a lot of you probably left court early on Friday. I stayed over, so I'll tell you what's going on. Now, I did not pick this up when they were talking about Jane. However, the defense stood up and they says, Your Honor, the prosecutors put out two exhibits today, and the exhibits are talking about Jane's state of mind because they're actually notes that she had written to self that basically said that Diddy was a pathological liar. So they're trying to use these two exhibits according to the defense. Agnifilio said, he's a lead attorney for Diddy. He basically said they're trying to show that he committed, because the second count is sex trafficking with fraud, force, and coercion. So by using her personal note saying Diddy was a pathological liar, they're trying to establish that he committed fraud. He defrauded her. Now, how did this happen? Let me explain. What Jane testified is that on many occasions, because Diddy started off, or Sean Combs, Mr. Combs, started off very romantic, according to her testimony. Very romantic guy, taking her to these restaurants and whining and dining her. It even led to her going to Kirk's and Caicos for 9 days. And then imagine in a private jet, you leave there and then you go to the Bahamas for another 5 days. I mean, this is what we call living large, right? So this is what she testified to. But kind of like Cassie, she tried to paint a picture that she got locked into this box of doing these, what they call debauchery nights, hotel nights, or freak offs. And once she got trapped into this freak off, there was really no way of getting out. And this is how they're trying to prove coercion, because they're trying to say, well, previously she was an advertiser online and she had modeling going. But once she got locked into doing these hotel nights with these strange men, and the prosecutors are on top of their game in a way, because they keep asking, did you want to have relations? Obviously, they use the other word. I'm trying to stay YouTube friendly. Did you want to have this going on with these strangers? And Jane kept saying, no, I didn't, right? Now, her story kind of changed toward the end, and I'll get to that later. But she paints that picture that she's trapped into this whole week after week. Sometimes there's 3 men there back to back. There's no eating, no drinking. So at any rate, she paints this picture that he's a pathological liar because he started off whining and dining her, but then he traps her with these freak offs. And then here's the fraud, right? This is what the court is talking about. He would say, okay, come out, let's go out tonight. You and I, we're gonna have a great time. She show up, and next thing you know, she's in a freak off. So that's what the prosecutors are they're really trying to kick this RICO all the way to the moon and make it happen. And it is quite it's interesting, because if you listen to all of the big stations, and you could put 24 lawyers in a room, 12, and they all tell you something different. They can't really give you a clear indication about this RICO. Remember, R. Kelly went down for RICO too, a one-man band, RICO, the same thing that Sean Puffy Combs is facing. And, as an average person, it would be terrifying to have to sit through a situation like this. Now, if you're a rich guy, I know it's tough too, but maybe in this case, he has 9 attorneys, I think 4 different shops. So maybe because they said that here's the problem, right? They say the Southern District of New York has a 95% conviction rate. But maybe that's because the average person will take a plea deal, because they know they can't go up against the government. Maybe if you're rich, you can get into that 5%. I'm not sure. But it's terrifying to know that anybody in this type of situation is very hard to beat. And I'm telling you, when you go online, people are saying, "Oh, it's not really RICO, it's not this and that." But if you go back to Occam's razor, and I always tell people, it's like when you have a balloon and you drop one little drop of water in at a time. It seems very insignificant, right? But remember, this is 8 weeks of a trial. And so you keep dropping every day. The government is dropping, oh, force. Oh, okay. He beat the chef. Oh, okay. There's just an overwhelming. They keep saying the burglary, although it did go down as a trespass. They keep saying burglary. They're saying arson. There's just a whole heap of things. The coercion they're trying to show with Cassie. They're trying to show it with Mia. And then Mia talked about how the guy, Deontay Nash. They jumped on Diddy's back to try to prevent him from beating Cassie so bad, and he took uh, Nash and threw him on the floor. He took Mia. She jumped on his back. He threw her against the wall, and then he picked up Cassie and threw her on a wooden bed frame, and that's how she got the big gash in her eye. So there's a lot happening in this case, but simultaneously, there are jurors that I believe that are seeing something quite different. And I won't get into details about jurors. I want to stay away from that so I can stay into the courtroom. But I will say there is quite a possibility that maybe some would not see this as the entire body. But for the most part, I think this is a tough jury for him to be able to navigate past. So I'm just giving you observation from the courtroom. Who knows how this could turn? But from what I see, I thought Cassie would be the best or the strongest witness, but it seemed like the witnesses are getting stronger. The victims are getting stronger. The lady that's on the stand now, Jane, she's telling a tough story. And it's often tough to sit there and listen to them talk about their abuse. However, the defense team that he has is incredible. Probably some of the best attorneys that money can buy. Brian Steele is systematic at breaking down the victims or the witnesses, and very convincing. And you wonder, by the time he's stand there and ask the person 100 questions with he doesn't appear to have an outline. It just makes you wonder. Then also, there's a female attorney, uh, I think Westmoreland. She tends to cross-examine the female victims from what I can see, and she's at the top of her game. I have never seen anything like it. She has the voice quality. She has the wit. She's very smart. She does a great job. I say that to say this. The prosecutors, they have an A1 team too. I mean, every time they go up there, it sounds like they know the case like the back of their hand. So it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. But there's an overwhelming amount of evidence. But I've had attorneys on my channel, and they tend to say that perhaps, in fact, today I had a criminal defense attorney, Calvin Johnson. He's incredible. And he came on and he talked about the case and how he would approach it to defend Diddy. So the problem is people run away. They listen to all of these tales of what happened, and they look at it from an emotional standpoint, not knowing the law. But the lawyers, they know all the loopholes and they know the law and everything else. So I think they look at the case quite different than what the average person would. So I would say use your own judgment when listening to all the channels and all of the media, because depending on who you listen to, it's kind of like religion. Religion is the lens through which you see your God. So if you're a Christian, you're going to see God as Jesus. If you're a Muslim, you're going to see Allah or what have you. So depending on who you're listening to, I would encourage you to listen at broad so you can get a vast understanding of what's happening with the trial. I think the judge is very good. I think he's fair, but I do think that the prosecutors they have an edge on this case, even from the standpoint of objections. When I count them and keep note, it seems like the prosecutions is that they're definitely making some steam here. So anyway, I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of what I see in court. A lot of people, and this is what I don't understand. Like I went on Law and Crime, and these are random people. I'll be on there tomorrow again. They only asked me questions about one morning for like 5 minutes and a few framed questions. And so I answer, and you get people in the audience, oh, this must be a Diddy fan. No, you're not listening to my channel where I tell you throughout the entire course of this trial, I'm telling you constantly that the prosecution is really laying down the case, right? But it just goes to show that a lot of things that we hear in the media is not true. And it's very hard to navigate. So that's why I wanted to do this and kind of come to my own conclusion and understand. And I will be covering more cases because I've been asked to by some of the relationships like law and crime. They send me a different case. So that'll be interesting. I'll continue to bring you guys cases. Hopefully, you guys will find some interest in the cases. But let me tell you this final thing. Like I said, I'm not here as a fan. I'm here as a neutral person. I'm trying to give you guys some sense of what's being said. You have to take it with a grain of salt because I'm a human too. So I may hear things and interpret it wrong, get it wrong, or what have you. But I will say this. When I went to this court case, I thought I was going to hear about celebrities going to a white party and people going into the back rooms and there's some homosexual activity and all of this stuff. Now, I'm not saying that that didn't happen or whatever. I don't know. All I can tell you is not in court. There's nothing in court about Diddy and children, Diddy and men, other than what you hear about when the worker, the sex worker, would release. There would be some weird hanky panky going on with Diddy and whatever. But other than that, what I heard in the media about Meek Mill and all these other things, basically, there's none of that in court. Now, people could argue and say, oh, well, but listen, I'm just here to tell you it's not in court. Haven't heard anything of the sort. So I would say you have to, and even since I've been in court, you wouldn't believe someone called me last week and they said, Kamala Harris and Barack Obama, I heard that they testified at this court case. I'm like, man, you guys need to close down your internet because these people tripping. So there's nothing like that in court. If anybody does have any questions or they want to come up, feel free to come up. I'll drop the link one more time. But if not, I will be back on during the week doing my regular shows. But this time I wanted to come on and just give you a little bit about my experience and also let you guys see the exhibits that were made available online. So again, if you want to come up, you can. If you have any questions, let's see. Udo on the go. Shout out to you, brother. Salute to you too. What's up, Jalen? Shout out to you. Jay Smith. I wonder if we're related. Thanks for the good job. J.E. says Diddy is only guilty of domestic violence and battery, not no federal RICO case. I get that, but let me ask you a question, J.E. Is domestic violence beating a chef, beating a stylist? Can you frame that as domestic violence? So I'd like to hear your viewpoint on that. How are you going to get around that when you beat the chef? And then they tell this other story. I'll tell this real quick before I go. David James was Diddy's executive assistant, tall white guy. He came on the stand. He was crying like a baby. I don't know why. I couldn't figure out, but I knew it was something going on. But he also was there when Suge Knight, the whole Suge Knight incident went down. It's almost past my time, so I can't really break down that story. I'll be here all night. Okay. I'm sorry to see here. Okay, so at any rate, there was an incident where Diddy allegedly had beat the chef. Chef Jourdain is her name, or what have you, or him, or they haven't. The person hasn't taken the stand. I think it's a female. And so allegedly, they say Diddy told this assistant to go file a police report and say that the chef beat him. So that's being framed as obstruction of justice as a part of the RICO because you're filing a false police report. And so he said instead of going to file the report, he went for a long drive. And then he also told, let me give you a little bit. The whole thing about, so James and also someone else, one of the security guards, they went down to Mel's Diner. Suge Knight's there. And this is after Biggie had died. So I guess there was some major issues there. They saw Suge. Then he testified that 4 Escalades, maybe at each corner of the Mel's Diner, pull up. And then they see one person give Suge Knight a gun. So somehow they got back out of there. They went back to the house. They told Diddy, and Diddy, they dress in all black. They have guns, and they go out on this escapade looking for Suge Knight. They couldn't find him. They come back in 30 minutes. This is where there's a discrepancy with Cassie, where Cassie, in one testimony, said that she didn't even go. In another testimony, Cassie said she went, but she was crying the whole time. So you see, in court, you get to hear all of these weird things happening. So anyway, that's enough stories for tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in. Let's see if anybody was trying to come up or have any more questions. All right, Marion, thank you. Thank you guys for liking and sharing the information. And she said, Marion says, thank you for keeping us informed. Very good. All right, Uda, what's good for you too? And I believe that's it. So thank you guys. I will be back on with more exhibits throughout the week. And also I'll be doing a couple wrap-ups with the attorneys that I typically have. I have a legal analyst that comes on the channel all the time. Her name is Candace Kelly. She's top of the line. And she really broke down, if you go back, she really broke the RICO case down. So that's pretty good if you want to go back and check that out. So that'll be it for today. Thank you guys for tuning in to Watching the World. I hope this in some way helped you to understand what we see in court and why so many people are so interested in this case. I think it's probably the case of our lifetime. If not, maybe there'll be more, but at least for now. So thank you for tuning in. I'll be back on later in the week to bring you more information. Also, I'll be live in the morning as I normally do around 6 o'clock. I kind of help you guys to see what it's like to travel through New York City and also see all the crazy things that are happening every day. So stay informed, stay in tune, and I'll be back at you soon. Thank you.